So you think you're ready to make a slab mug? You wanna make a slab mug? Well, you came to the right spot. Hey guys, so you're ready to make a slab mug. So you need a couple things to get yourself ready to go. For one, when you start this project, you're gonna wanna have your board ready from your cabinet. A small one is totally fine. You also want to have a scoring rib, a fettling knife or a potter's knife, and one of these scrapers from the cabinet to get started. Also, from the tool cabinet, we need one of these PVC tubes. There's two different sizes and other things too. You can use water bottles and things from around the classroom. You're going to need 2 pieces of paper towel and a roll of tape. Okay, now as in the last video on how to work the slab roller, hopefully you've seen that one, and getting things started. One of the things before we get going is you guys are working as a class. There's going to be a lot of people using the slab roller. So these damp spots here, if it gets too saturated, the slab, if you keep rolling clay into slabs on these wet spots, this will become really sticky and the clay won't release from the tabletop. So it might be better to find a drier spot on the table here in the middle, or we might have to swap out this wet board with one underneath, so we can slide this one out and put it under and use a drier board, especially on days of high activity. You won't be able to use it if it gets too wet. This I don't think is too wet for today, so I'm gonna just go for it. Okay, so I'm gonna flatten this slab out right here, or flatten this clay out, that is. So I'm rolling over it. That's probably long enough. Now as I bring it back and making sure that the canvas is out of the way. And here's my slab. That's just a hunk of junk right there, so I'm going to get that out of the way right away. And first thing I'm going to do is just kind of pull it up off of the table. It does sometimes stick, so I can use some of these tools to help me. A lot of times it's a good idea to just get it up right away so that you don't compress it and then it sticks even more. So now I've released it from the table. I'm just going to kind of give it a quick smooth. This tool is really great, but you can also use your little hand tools, like these little metal ribs can be really great. I'm just going to roll this or smooth this out a little bit. This side is really rough, so I'm just going to ditch that right away. Get that out of here. And now we have these slab rollers set to the thickness that we want, which is 1/4 inch. And that can be, for some things like a mug, especially if it's a bigger mug, that can be a little bit thick because the bigger mugs are bigger, so if it's a little on the thicker side, that's going to get to be heavy. So I'm going to thin this slab out because I know that this mug is going to be a little bigger. So I'm going to start with cutting off the back end of this. I know that this is more than I'm going to need, so I'm going to cut this off, and this is going to be the bottom of my mug. So I'm going to actually save that. So I'm going to put it right here on my board so that I save it. So I know that this is already probably long enough, and when I thin it out a little bit more, it's going to get longer. As it thins out, it's going to stretch. So I'm going to use one of these rolling pins just by hand. I'm not going to necessarily super monitor the thickness, but I am just going to use this and just try to thin it out kind of evenly. A little bit more. I did a couple passes with that little hand roller, so I'm going to, I picked it up and I released it from the table so it doesn't stick. So I'm just going to do a couple more, just kind of stretch this puppy out. that looks good. I've probably thinned it in half. So it's probably half as thick as it started, or roughly. So that's pretty good right there. So now I'm ready to give this slab some form. Okay, so to give this form, I'm going to use this tube as my basic shape. So if I roll the slab around this is a plastic tube, the water in the clay is going to just stick to this tube. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use these paper towels that I have. I'm going to use 2 to make sure that I cover this up completely. So I'm wrapping the second one backwards over the first one so that I make sure that I cover up that seam. And then I'm going to use just, whatever you need. 2 pieces of tape is more than enough. So I'm taping this tape. I'm taping the tape to the paper towel, and not, what I don't want to do is tape it up here and tape paper towel and the tube. I just want to have the paper towel to the paper towel so that this can slide off later. So I cut these edges. It doesn't have to be perfect. This back edge, I'm just cutting a little bit off so I have a nice clean line, and I'm just going to cut minimal off here as straight as I can, eyeball it so that I have a good line there. And now I can start to just roll this. It helps to cut the back end and a semi-straight line so that when you roll this over, you want to try to keep this really tight. And then this end acts as a little bit of a gauge so that it's close, and that's pretty close. So now I can cut that, and now I can kind of, actually let's do this the other way. Let's cut this like this. So it's on my form pretty tight, and now we want to get this, I don't want to just squish this seam down, but what we want to do is make sure that we rough up this joint and make sure that these attach really well. So I want to come up and I can cut through both of these and peel off any extra. And now I can score the seams on both. And then I can put this together really nice. Another thing we don't want to do is we don't want to have fingerprints all over this, because fingerprints will also be, amongst other things, besides defacing the surface, there'll be thin spots, which might need patching if you're really particular. So we want to be careful, especially how we're putting this seam together, that we don't thin it out, or at least we fade it and have a nice transition so you don't see that seam later. I don't need this extra right here, but in a community class setting, it might be nice to ask if anybody needs an extra piece for whatever. You could cut handles out of this or cut decorative things. So if somebody else needs it before you throw it away or recycle it, you can just give a little shout out. So now I've got this form around the tube, basically. So I'm just going to put it on top of this piece, like this, so that I can turn this a little bit easier. And I'm going to go over just really quick. I'm going to use this serrated rib tool with the teeth. I'm going to just give it a quick go over the seam while the form is still in here, the plastic tube is still in here, and then smooth this. And I'm going to go around. I smoothed, one of the first things I did after I made the slab is I smoothed out the whole slab on one side. Now I'm going to smooth out the other side that's on the form. I smoothed it out when it was laying down, so that was what's the inside of my mug. Then when I wrapped it around the form, it exposed the bottom of the slab, which is now the outside of this mug. It's really important to do that, make sure that everything is smooth. Not only are we looking for, and it doesn't have to be smooth, but it's a good place to start. But more than that, it's really important that we compress this. So I'm not, you know, you definitely might add textures, and I'll probably add some textures to this, but more than that, we need to make sure that it's compressed so we don't have any cracking issues later on. So I'm just kind of going around this puppy, smoothing it out really good. So one last thing before we can kind of do some basic beginning decoration is I can leave it like this with the rim kind of tattered right now, or I can also, and I can cut that later, or I can also attend to that now. So one way to straighten that out before we take the mold away is I can lay it down in front of me, and with my potter's knife being parallel to the tube, so I'm just kind of using that as a reference point, I can roll this away and just really lightly to start. Kind of draw a line. It was pretty close. So I just brought those lines together and cut that off. And now it's not 100% perfect, but it's close. It's pretty good. Now I can put this back down on top of there, on my board, on top of my slab, slide the tube out, and then just pull the paper out, the paper towel. That's just garbage. I might add some decorations to this later, probably for sure, actually. And a lot of times, in most cases, I'll wait till this firms up a bit to add decorations and do the cleanup. But sometimes you can add, it's nice to add some decorations while it's wet too. I don't want to handle this. This is really soft, and because I thinned it out, it's going to be really fragile right now. So that's why we work on the board, so we can pick it up. I can cover this and put it in my cabinet and wait till it firms up. But some decorations are good to do when the clay is soft. I just want to be really careful with it. So one thing I can do is just even like a board or one of these wooden potter's ribs are nice tools to add. So I'm going to just use this board and just kind of go around this thing and add, kind of push into it with the corner. So now I've just added some little kind of decorations to the surface, and I'll probably definitely do more once this firms up a bit.